I'm on AskReddit again because it's the only thing I'm good for. Reading responses to what is the scariest story you've ever heard, real or fake, internet or not. I read through a few of these and I already know I'm not getting sleep tonight, so that's fun. A girl in her teens gets called upon to babysit some kids on a Friday evening. Apparently she watches those two girls pretty regularly. Anyway, the parents leave for the evening and said they wouldn't be home until around midnight. The teenager puts the two young girls to bed around 9 PM. She does what most people would do, go downstairs and watches TV for a while. She watches TV for about an hour or so, and by this point it's getting pretty late. She's in the living room on the main level. The TV sits in the corner of the room with large windows on each side of it. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she sees what she thinks is someone walking by the window outside through the bushes. Naturally, she gets pretty freaked out. She ends up calling 911 and the police arrive. The police check outside, didn't find any signs of anyone walking around. The police officers assure her that she's safe and that the lighting from both the TV and lamp probably played tricks on her by reflecting off the window. The teen agrees that's probably what it was. It asks them to check inside the house for her just to be safe. The police reluctantly oblige and start randomly checking the rooms, closets and garage a bit haphazardly. They roll their eyes a bit as they wonder how much this girl's imagination has run wild. Well, turns out they find a man hiding underneath one of the little girl's beds. I guess as the story goes, it was the little girl's mother's ex-husband. The babysitter didn't see someone walk past the window outside. What she saw was a reflection of him walking behind the couch. Fuck that. I'm never babysitting again. I knew a girl who said that while home alone she heard a tapping sound on the floor of her kitchen, in brackets coming from the basement. She's worried it might be a pipe leaking, so she uses a house phone to call her dad, and he tells her not to worry about it. After hanging up the house phone, her cell phone immediately rings. It's her dad, telling her to call the cops and get the fuck out the house because he heard someone breathing on the other end of the line. She gets out the house and calls the cops. The cops show up, search the house and find some psycho in the basement with a machete. Apparently he had been tapping it against the basement ceiling in an attempt to lure her downstairs. If she'd gone down into that basement, she probably would have never came back up. Why do I do this to myself? Why do I willingly read these stories? There was a young man named Tom who didn't exactly have the best home life. Every night Tom went to sleep buried under covers, trying to silence all the noise. Every night there were always arguments. Even with all his blankets on, Tom could still hear them clear as day. They always got louder and louder, so even if Tom was lucky enough to fall asleep before it started, it was guaranteed he would be woken up. The only thing he could do is lie there and pretend to be asleep. Sometimes he heard slapping or hitting. Best to stay quiet though, no need to get involved. Some nights she would come in Tom's room and sit in the chair by his bed. She would sit there for hours and just sob. Tom didn't know if the yelling or sobbing was worse. He just wanted to escape, but Tom couldn't escape. It was the only place he could afford. Although he lived alone, he knew he was never alone. So there's just a random couple that breaks into Tom's place every night to argue. That's what I got from the story. I've been lying down for hours now. It's 5:35 AM and there's not much I can do. You know what the worst part of my situation is? I'm in the same room as my parents. They keep looking at me and I can't help but look back and try not to cry or scream. Their eyes are focused on me and their mouths are wide open. There's a strong scent of blood and I feel paralysed with fear. Here's the thing, the second I make any hint that I'm not asleep anymore, I'm completely fucked. I will die and there's nobody around to save me. I've been trying to think of a way out, but the only idea I have is to rush for the front door and scream for help, hoping my neighbours hear me. It's risky, but if I stay here, I'll surely die. He's waiting for me to wake up and see his masterpiece. You're probably wondering what's going on. I do get ahead of myself sometimes. About 3 hours ago, I heard screaming from the other side of the house. I got up and went to check on the noise before realising I had to use the restroom. Instead of doing the smart thing and investigating, I used that bathroom. There was blood on the carpet. I got very worried and ran back to my room, hiding under the sheets like the coward I was. I tried to convince myself to go back to sleep, that it was just some really vivid dream or something, but I heard my bedroom door open. Like the terrified child I was, I peeked out from under my blankets to see what was going on. I could see something dragging my dead parents into my room. It was not human, I can tell you that. It was hairless, with no eyes and no clothing. It walked like a caveman with its back slouched as it dragged my parents. But this thing was much smarter than any caveman. It was aware of what it was doing. It propped my dad up on the edge of my bed and made him face me. It then sat my mother down in the chair and positioned her towards me as well. It then started rubbing its hands on the walls, staining them with blood, and then drew a circle with the devil's pentagram in it. This thing had made what it would probably call a masterpiece. To finish it off, it scribbled a message into the wall that I could not read in the darkness. It then positioned itself under my bed waiting to strike. The scariest thing is now, my eyes have adjusted to the darkness since then and I can read the message on the wall. I don't want to look at it because it's terrifying to think about it, but I feel I need to see before I'm killed. I peek at the creature's masterpiece. I know you're awake. Sleep is not an option for me tonight. It's just not. Since I was about 5, every few years or so, I see the same person in my dreams. It's genderless, has pale skin, long black hair, typical Ring Girl lookalike, but the first time I saw it I was 5, which was 1996, and Ring Girl didn't exist. Anyways, sometimes it'll be in the background of my dreams, sometimes I'll be having a regular dream and then I get a distinct feeling that is being interrupted, and I have a brief dream where this genderless entity is staring at me, then I go back to my regular dream. The worst one was a dream where I was being chased by it. Finally ended up crouched down in the kitchen of a house made entirely of glass. It found me, picked me up and started shaking me as the room spun around and around. All I remember is the room going around us in a blur as if we were standing still, and it, in brackets the entity, was just staring at me. We didn't break eye contact until I woke up, but I woke up because I couldn't breathe. I felt like a 5-ton weight was on my whole body. I was laying on my back. I never ever sleep on my back. Then the weight started lifting as if someone had been laying on top of me and started to get up. The last time I saw it in my dreams was about 3 years ago. I don't think I've gone much longer than that without seeing it, so I'm afraid I'm due for a visit soon. I was chatting to a couple at work the other day. They come in all the time and we got talking about weird creepy stuff. The husband told me a tale that had happened to him. We'll call him Dave. Dave does handyman and electrical work, and one day someone rang him and asked him if he could quote them on some work on their house. Dave turns up, examines the house, discusses the work and quotes them a price, which they agree to. He then asks the customers how they found him out of interest, and they told him an odd story. They'd been given his number by a friend, but first they had tried a number for another electrician they found in an old phone book they had, also called Dave. The first David turned up, examined the house, given them a quote and seemed friendly enough, and left after giving them a number to ring them on if they wanted the work done. A few days later they rung the number to tell him they wanted the work done. A woman answered and got angry, then upset when they asked for Dave. After tearfully asking if they were pranking her, she explained that she was the widow of Dave, who had been dead for almost 2 years. This story is from a friend. His parents were divorced and lived on separate sides of the country, one in New York State and the other in Utah. He would spend several weeks in Utah with his father and then drive back to New York to live with his mother. He travelled with his German Shepherd and slept in his car at truck stops with this makeshift curtain to cover the car windows. One night, he's in the middle of nowhere and the dog wakes him up, going batshit crazy, barking, growling and yelping. He finally calms her down, gets her on a leash and takes her outside, but there's no one around except for some truckers sleeping in their cabs. In the morning, he does his usual routine, uses the pay shower in the truck stop. There are other guys using the showers, so he's not alone. He rushes through the shower so he's the first one out and finds something written in red lipstick on the mirror. "You're lucky you had the dog last night." Needless to say, he stayed in hotels for the remainder of his journey. Oh, shit. A man went to a hotel and walked up to the front desk to check in. The woman at the desk gave him his key and told him that on the way to his room there was a door with no number that was locked and no one was allowed in there. She explained that this was a storeroom and that it was out of bounds. She reminded him of this several times before allowing him upstairs. So he followed the instructions of the woman at the front desk, going straight to his room and going to bed. However, the insistence of the woman had piqued his curiosity. So the next night he walked down the hall to the door and tried the handle. Sure enough, it was locked. He bent down and looked through the wide keyhole. Cold air passed through it, chilling his eye. What he saw was a hotel bedroom, like his, and in the corner was a woman whose skin was incredibly pale. She was leaning her head against the wall, facing away from the door. He stared in confusion for a while. Was this a celebrity? The owner's daughter? He almost knocked on the door out of curiosity, but decided not to. As he was still looking, the woman turned sharply and he jumped back from the door, hoping she would not suspect he had just been spying on her. He crept away from the door and walked back to his room. The next day he returned to the door and looked through the wide keyhole. This time all he saw was redness. He couldn't make anything out besides the distinct red colour. Perhaps the inhabitants of the room knew he was spying the night before and had blocked the keyhole with something red. He felt embarrassed that he'd made the woman so uncomfortable and hoped she had not made a complaint with the woman on the front desk. At this point, he decided to consult her for more information. After some gentle quizzing and the promise that the explanation would not go further than him, she finally said, "Well, I might as well tell you the story of what happened in that room. A long time ago, a man murdered his wife in there. We find that even now, people get uncomfortable staying there, but these people were not ordinary. They were white all over except for their eyes, which were red." Well, I think that's me done for the night, considering it's now nearly 11, it's 11:15 at night, and I still need to get this edited for tomorrow, and I'm also just scared shitless and don't want to read anymore because I actually want to try and get some sleep tonight, even though the amount of sleep I'll probably get is 3 hours. I really hope you guys enjoyed and I did not just scare the absolute shit out of myself for nothing. If you did, then please like, comment and subscribe. It helps me out a bunch, and after everything I just read, I would really appreciate it. Yeah, so I'll see you whenever I next see you.